I'm Maria Hall Brown, and this is LA Currents. With the cancellation of hundreds, if not thousands, of performances and the closure of so many venues across Los Angeles, that means there's lack of income for not just the artists, but the venues themselves. But fortunately, my guest here has some good news. I'd love to welcome Joe Smoke, Grants Administration Division Director of the Department of Cultural Affairs. Thanks for being here.
My pleasure.
All right, let's just sort of do the basic overview.
Let's do it.
If no one knows what the Department of Cultural Affairs is or what its role is, how would you describe it in your elevator speech?
My elevator speech would be the arts, design, entertainment, and fashion industries together make up the cultural sector, the creative sector of Los Angeles. It's our number one economic engine. 1 out of every 6 people in Los Angeles is employed in this creative sector. And the Department of Cultural Affairs is a very small and mighty department of 100 people. And our role is to focus on a spectrum of services, diverse, educational, free and low cost for the public. We're huge fans of the commercial arts and entertainment industries, but we don't deal with commercial art. We deal with the artists and the arts organizations that want to do a public service, free or low cost.
And you actually are funded, I would imagine, through the generosity and the kindness of strangers, but there's also development fees, correct?
Correct.
Help?
The Department of Cultural Affairs has 2 funding sources, 1 tax and 1 fee. So we receive about 1% of the tourist occupancy tax, which is the hotel bed tax. So when people come to Los Angeles and they stay in a hotel, a percentage of their hotel bed tax fee comes to the Department of Cultural Affairs. And we're also funded by a developer's fee. So when a developer builds a building in Los Angeles that is non-residential and is valued at $250,000 or greater, there are fees attached to the permitting and planning of that building, and those fees also come to sponsor our department.
I don't think there's a building that's ever been built in Los Angeles that's commercial that's under $250,000. So that's, man. Now, obviously, when it's a normal operating day, you know, the DCA funds and gives grants to a huge array of organizations, does it not?
Correct. We deal in volume. It's a busy, active city. I have a staff of 2.5 really dedicated people, and we have about 350 vendors each year, producing about 1,200 free and low-cost events, arts activities, workshops, festivals. And so each of those, together that portfolio is about $4 million of our department's budget, and we manage to serve 2.3 million people every year with those events.
Wow. And when all of this, when the pandemic hit, the DCA immediately created this fund to help out.
Sure. So let me tell you a little bit about the pivot. So we had a very interesting partnership with a business incubator called Community Partners, which is located at the California Endowment. We had a $200,000 contract with them. We were using it to seed street and sidewalk festivals, new events that had never taken place before. And the program had 3 years of success. We sponsored 10 to 15 new street and sidewalk events every year. Immediately after the Safer at Home policy, we knew that that program wouldn't continue. And so we asked our community collaborating agency if they would work with us to reimagine that program. So we created the Artist Emergency Relief Fund, and we used that $200,000 and some other money that's been swept and donated into the fund. And we've created a mini grant program. So thus far, we've spent $181,000. We've funded 471 artists with mini grants of $400. And these are monies that is a true relief program. We're giving them the money because they have spent time, bought materials, and lost a job due to the Safer at Home policy.
You did phase 1, who's lost money, who's invested money, but there's also some very specific categories and parameters who are eligible for this.
Sure. So we were rolling it out in what we call rounds and batches.
Got it.
We want people to have an opportunity to fix their proposal. So I just mentioned that we have 471 checks out in the world to very happy people. We have 600 proposals. So we're working with the ones that are not quite eligible yet to fix the elements of their application. We also rolled out in disciplines. So music, dance, and theater was first. That was our decision because there's so many artists working in those fields. They could immediately tell us the date of where the event was going to take place, in the site in Los Angeles. They could get a letter saying that the event had been canceled. We just needed those assurances. And as we've got done with round 1 and batch 1 and 2, we've moved on to round 2, which is open now. We've added film, media, literature, and educational teaching artists. So if you were a pottery professor at a local shop and you taught groups of people pottery and now that's canceled, your series of classes is canceled, you can apply to this fund for some relief for those lost wages.
This is not something that we actually talked that we would talk about, but have you had a chance to read these grant applications? Is there a personal element to these stories?
I'm not reading them and auditing them personally. Ben Espinosa and Rafael Vaca on our staff are doing all the auditing of these proposals. And yes, we're getting a very personal story, both on the front end and the back end. We're hearing about people who need the money for food, they need the money for rent, they've put out a lot of money to rehearse a dance presentation that's not going to happen, or they're so bummed that they have a new book and they were about to do a reading at a bookstore and that reading's been canceled. So they've lost not only the visibility of that reading, but the potential sale of the book because they're not going to be promoting it. So we've heard a lot of personal stories, and honestly, the thank you letters have been really amazing.
Those are the kind of things that you probably want to keep forever too, because just the artistic temperament of those that are giving you these grant proposals, I'm sure adds an element of personal that you may not necessarily see when a major organization, puts in for a grant as well.
Yeah, these are trying times. It's why my staff is doing such an extraordinary job, giving everyone that personal touch, helping people fix things. Many of these artists have never written a grant proposal before. No. They've never filled out a form. They had no idea what to expect. And so our strategy of doing these in rounds and batches and releasing different artistic disciplines has worked in our favor because we have a wait list. We don't have a list of rejected applicants. We're just moving forward, and hopefully we're going to get to everybody.
There does need to, however, be, as you mentioned earlier, something to demonstrate that this was really going to happen, that this was really going to be available to the public. There are some restrictions in regards to legitimately demonstrating that what you were going to do.
Yeah, and much of it's super simple. It's, your address, the address of the venue, the date, show us some marketing material so we can match the name. These grants are also available for small ensembles. So if you're a dance company called Acme Dance and there's 4 of you, we just want to see the marketing material that says Acme Dance. And then the proposal comes by the lead dancer. We give them $1,600 and they agree to disseminate the $400 to each of their ensemble members. So, but honestly, the grant application it's a list of facts. It's nothing complicated.
Well, that's good, because the next question I was going to ask you is, anyone who's ever submitted a grant application to any organization knows that there's also reporting required after the fact to demonstrate that the monies that you received were in fact used for what you said they were going to use. Are there any reporting restrictions on these at all?
This grant has no reporting restrictions because it's a true relief program. Our office is working on relief, then we're going to work on COVID response, and then we're going to work on COVID recovery. We expect to reimagine our work in those 3 ways. And so this is true relief. It's for lost time and lost wages. We have a new program that was put up online on Friday that is going to be our first response program, and it's for the theater district in NoHo. The council member and his staff have asked us to post a grant to help the theaters reopen, and so we're asking them to put up something online, which is what the public can see now, as a way of re-entering the business world. So we're going to ask them to pay rent and pay salaries and get people back in the theaters and get the juices going again, because we want those businesses in the recovery mode to be able to open safely and for the public to enjoy live theater again.
That's exciting. So the way you're going to continue with these rollouts of these very small ensembles or these small groups and these individual requests, in phases, as you said. Yeah. So you're in phase 2, hopefully there'll be a phase 3. But then in addition, with Councilman Krikorian and his area of NoHo, you are now putting in place something for organizations that might be a little bit larger.
Correct. The cultural ecology of Los Angeles runs from super large institutions like the LA Philharmonic and the LA County Museum of Art down to tiny, one-person entrepreneurs that work in the gig economy and work on a project-by-project basis. So we have to have our eye on all of those reactivations. Artists first, because they live with very little margin in the gig economy. Now we're moving to small and mid-sized organizations, and eventually we'll actually help promote the large institutions reopening as well. But yeah, we're starting with artists and small institutions, and the council member asked us to reimagine some public art fees that were brought in through the development of commercial buildings in his district, and to use those to help to do a COVID response program with the small live theater organizations. So it just opened Friday. We're excited to do it. That's our first response program.
The immediacy of what you've been able to do is incredibly impressive because, as you said, this was a pivot. This was a pivot that you had to get buy-in from not only the funders or those that had actually created this, this pool of money to begin with, but then also to be able to get your staff up to speed to make sure that all of this is happening really quickly. And you are very conscientious about not giving anybody a yes and then having them wait for the money as well.
Yeah, we have an amazing collection of community partners. We have great thought leaders in the city council. We have an amazing executive director who is making the rounds and understanding what people want and how they want to assist the community in getting reactivated. So yeah, we're a small staff, which is great because we don't have to have large meetings to pivot. We see ourselves as flexible and reactive. We know the community needs this support, and so we're trying to create fast, easy, and rewarding mechanisms to get them back to work.
This is not for you, but this is just a comment. I cannot fathom with these massive organizations to the size of, say, the LA Phil and canceling the Hollywood Bowl for the summer and things like that. That is terrifying for those of us who love the arts and who are passionate about participating in them, being good audience members, and supporting them in any way. I mean, I hope that there are other people out there who maybe, will remain in the business of supporting those organizations, from an individual standpoint if possible.
Yes, shout out to the donors. Keep funding the arts, and if there's one thing we know about artists, they're resilient, and arts administrators are the same way. We understand that we're often overlooked as an important part of a city, not thought of as a vital element, but it's truly vital. I mean, we can't just have a safe and prosperous city. We have to have an exciting city. We have to have a city that's communal and creative, where people want to get out and see each other and be educated, be enlightened.
Recently, Herb Alpert had his Herb Alpert Awards through his foundation, and he calls artists the second responders because, they are unbelievably important, as to what you just said. And I don't think we would have been able to figure out how to manage most of this had there not been creativity in regards to what can we do and how can we do it. And there's nothing like an artist or the artistic community to come up with innovative ways to manage even the most difficult of times. Yeah. So I am fully in support. But not only does the DCA give money, they also have a lot of resources that are non-transactional in terms of finances. So you have a lot in that realm as well.
Correct. We have an outstanding marketing and development division. They have posted a resource list on our website, which is culturela.org. It's updated every day with things that the public can enjoy that are online. Again, we focus on things that are free and low cost. We're focusing on things that are diverse and innovative. people are welcome to go to that list and to go to our website and see the list of resources. And while you're there, sign up for a mailing list. We have so many checkboxes to learn about you because our social media personnel are also pushing out and promoting the things that are on this resource list. So if we know that you're interested in film festivals, we can direct you to the 2 or 3 film festivals that have gone online.
Yeah.
Right? They've immediately tried to reimagine what a film festival will look like for the public.
So in normal times, you know, and we will all hope and pray that those happen very, very soon again, the DCA partners with a lot of large organizations across the city. So what are the parameters? Where do the partnerships come into being, and what does the DCA look for in a partner?
Whether you're large or small, we're looking for a not-for-profit agency. We specialize in working not with the commercial arts and entertainment industry, but with those groups that really have a public benefit. They have a charitable status. They know that if they receive $10,000 a year, all $10,000 is going to be spent on arts and culture, and at the end of the year, they're going to have a zero balance. So we look for those partners that are truly dedicated to public service, that have free and low-cost things that are interesting for the public. And then we're also looking to make sure we match the relevance with neighborhoods and communities. So we're looking for vendors, always good partners in every community, because we want the arts and culture to come out of the community in which it's intended to serve. So hopefully that answers your question. I mean, we don't necessarily go out have to look for them; they find us. It's, you know, anyone can tell you if you're looking for funding, the very first grant you write is to a public agency. You write to your city, your county, your state. Those are your places to learn the ropes before you go out and talk to private donors and the National Endowment for the Arts, etc. So we're also in the business of teaching people how to write grants and how to be in a good partnership with us, because it's important. We want to purchase their services if they're the most authentic blankety blank in their community.
All right, so you've been doing this for 20 years now with the Department of Cultural Affairs here in Los Angeles. So this is an evil question, and I apologize up front, but I'm going to go ahead and ask it. What makes a good grant proposal? Because any nonprofit of any type is always looking for someone to help allow their mission to continue, and a lot of that is through grants. So you're the master here. What's a good grant proposal, and what's a grant proposal that will make you say, oh, I'm sorry, we just can't?
Right. Facts. Number one, the most important thing in a grant proposal is facts. A grant is nothing other than a business plan. We want to know who, what, where, when, and most importantly, why. So you should spend the most amount of the time telling us why we should invest in doing something. Why is city dollars necessary for the project that you're proposing? So honestly, it's expository writing. It's not creative writing. And a lot of people who write grants may get caught up in the late hour dreaming. But I would say, hold it back. It's really about facts. It's laying out the facts. Who are you? What are you doing? Where are you going to do it? When are you going to do it? And most importantly, why are you going to do it with the request that you're asking? If you're doing something deep and detailed where you're teaching children an art form, then we would expect you to spend a certain dollar amount per head. On the other hand, if it's a mural on the freeway and it's going to get a lot of eyeballs, then that's a different cost per head ratio, right? It's something that someone is going to drive by and get 2 seconds of pleasure. So we look at the scope of the project, we look at the audience it's intended to serve, and then we look at an investment ratio, a cost per head ratio. And again, I would tell grant writers to think about that. If you're serving 100 people, I need a $100 a person story. If you're serving 1 million people at a second each while they're driving down the freeway with a mural, it's a different story, right? It's a different story.
The story of Los Angeles is fascinating. I remember it was like back in 2017, there was this big thing about LA had actually surpassed New York in being the artistic hub of the United States. Would you agree with that based on what you were seeing and what's happening around town?
Somewhere in around 2017, it was noted that the number of artists living and working in Los Angeles had surpassed the number of artists living and working in New York.
Okay.
But that's the number of people who live somewhere and work somewhere it's very different than it also depends on the industry, right? So we have a very robust entertainment industry, film industry, design, furniture design, toy design, fashion design. These are different kinds of artists that have come to Los Angeles to build their project portfolio and to work in a milieu of other people that inspire them. New York is still an incredibly strong city for other kinds of art forms, right? For the visual arts, it's an amazing gallery scene. The dance community in New York is unmatched. But again, I see them as two sets of artists who are gathering around their industry. Not necessarily that someone has to make a choice between either of those two great cities. I'm from the Chicago area. Chicago has an amazing theater community, great restaurants. So the culinary arts are fascinating in Chicago. There's so much to love in all of America's great cities. But Los Angeles should be very proud of the fact that artists want to live here, not just because they want to be in a milieu of other creative artists, but because they can afford to live here and still be productive.
So obviously the Department of Cultural Affairs is reaching out and helping artists, but what have you seen in the artist communities themselves? How have they been helping each other? Have there been, are you aware of different activities from artist to artist or organization to artist or vice versa?
Sure. The arts community is very resilient, very flexible, and very innovative. So it's been very impressive to see artists not only form new collaborations online, but to reimagine programming online, and then to do things that are, automatically suited for a new platform. So last week I saw a dance company that took advantage of the sort of Hollywood Squares format of a Zoom meeting where everyone's sort of arranged in little boxes, and they had 6 of their dancers in 6 of the boxes, and 2 or 3 dancers, I believe there were 9 boxes, came from New York City. And the artists were looking at each other and dancing in their box and responding to the body forms of the other dancers. So that's an instance of a dance company that's used to dancing live that immediately saw the opportunity to dance on Zoom, and furthermore to enroll dancers in a different city. To me, that was fascinating to see within 2 weeks of a safer at home policy, to see a dance concert online in Zoom, suited for Zoom, and with guest artists from another city.
And you know darn well that big business is going to utilize some of that idea, and you know that other organizations that are not in the creative industries are going to actually take those ideas and reformulate them to work for themselves. That's the imperative of the arts. That just reaffirms my thought that without artists and without creatives, there would be no comprehensive understanding of how to manage all of this. You also have an artistic background. You have an interesting degree, which I thought at least should be spoken of. Archaeology and photography.
Yeah.
How did that happen, and what is it?
Oh, well, I went to Princeton to become a medical doctor because it's what I thought I should be. And I emerged an art historian. I fell in love with both of those things, photography and art history. And I came to Los Angeles to do my graduate work. I fell in love with Los Angeles and I stayed here because I thought I could mix those two things. And you might think they're very unrelated to my job, but in fact, the job of a grants director is to be very democratic, to be super realistic, and to also know that things are built upon the pathway of other things. And so my thinking as both a photographer and art historian plays right into the value systems that one needs to have as a grants director. So I feel like all of those things are things that I deal with every day. What's the reality? What's the pathway that this is built upon? Why is it historically important for a neighborhood or for an entire city, and then how do we be democratic about the resources we have.
All right, then along those lines, since you are looking at all of these things pragmatically from a higher level, how do all of these add to the lives of just every Angelino, not just those of us who are madly and passionately in love with the arts, but those who are just driving up the freeway and see that mural on the side of the road, or just are getting up in the morning and going to their job?
Yeah, well, I mean, anyone who comes to LA will tell you that it's the diversity of the experience here is so outstanding. And it has to do with, everything from a very personal level to a political level. So I think we're a set of people that can't live without expression. We want to express ourselves, right? We want to make things. So we're a city of makers, and that's everything from the home chef who's carrying on some cultural traditions in their family to the professional artists that work for amazing corporations in Los Angeles. And I think those of us who live here, who are around that kind of expression, want to enjoy that other people's expressions, right? You want to drive through a neighborhood and see something exciting. You want to remember that. You want to. I'm fascinated by the flavor of every neighborhood when I go there, and take mental notes about, I want to go back. I want to try that restaurant. I have to look up that. I'm always at my stoplight, putting in something on my notepad, like try this and don't forget this.
It's a place of dreams, that's for sure. All right, so those dreamers who have, let's go back to the basics. We've gotten to the 3,000 foot level. Let's go back to, if people really want to apply for these grants, this relief fund on a very basic, it's all online, it's all on the Department of Cultural Affairs website.
It's very simple. You go to culturela.org, you'll see a little box that says grants and calls. Immediately you'll click through. You'll see a list of every program that's open. So if you're an artist and you've lost wages, you live in the city of Los Angeles and your canceled gig is in the city of Los Angeles, then you click on Artist Emergency Relief Fund and you fill out your one page. It's a jot form. It's super simple. You just drop in your data, and then the staff will call you if they have any questions or there's something that doesn't match. The restarting of community live theater and NoHo will be listed there as of Friday, and every program that we roll out in our relief, response, and recovery platform will be listed there. So it's one stop. We're dedicated to make sure that people can click on those links and fill out those forms.
Do you have any idea the time frame of how long these relief funds, I mean, as you said, we're going in phases. Is it until the money runs out? Or?
The relief fund we created within 3 days
right.
of the Safer at Home policy. So we immediately reimagined that program. It was up and running at the end of a week. Checks were out in 20 days. So that's I can speak from the experience of that one, that we were getting to the close of the $200,000 we had. We've had such a great response, not only from the artist community saying this is needed and so welcome, but community partners, which is our collaborating agency, put out a call to the community to donate. And we've received very small donations from people who wanted to take a tax write-off and wanted to donate $400 and sponsor an artist. We just got word last week that a very prestigious family foundation called the Durfee Foundation in Santa Monica has written a wonderful support check to the Artist Emergency Relief Program. And so we're not saying when it's going to close, because if we can raise money and continue to fund people, then we don't have to close a program.
Well, that is really exciting, incredibly needed, and I have no doubt that you are going to have a file of unbelievably poignant thank yous. So, Joe, it's been a delight talking with you.
My pleasure.
Thank you so much for allowing me to ask some of the questions that may not necessarily be comfortable answering, but I really appreciate it. And I wish you all the best, and thank you so much for supporting all the artists.
My pleasure. Thank you so much.